Hello students, welcome to class PM. In today's class we are going to learn about the properties of ionic and covalent compounds. So we already learned in the previous classes what are the ionic compounds and how they will form, what are the covalent compounds, how they will form. Now in today's class we are going to see the differences in their properties. First we will discuss about the properties of ionic compounds, then we will discuss about the properties of covalent compounds. First, the properties of ionic compounds. So, we know that ionic bonds are the stronger bonds than covalent bonds. Ionic bond is a stronger bond than covalent bond. That's why these ionic compounds are solids at room temperature. Ionic compounds are solids at room temperature due to strong ionic bond. That is the one point. And the second property is that due to their strong ionic bond, you need to give more energy to break that bond. That's why their melting and the boiling points are also very high in comparing to covalent bond. So the melting and boiling points are also very high for the ionic compounds. Another one, ionic compounds are soluble only in the polar solvents. Polar solvent means which will produce the ions, because ionic compounds also produce the ions. The polar solvents also produce the ions. So like dissolves in like. We know that like dissolves in the like means the same type of solids dissolve in the same type of solvents. That is what. So the polar solutes dissolves in the polar solvents. Since ionic compounds produce ions, they will dissolve in those solvents which will produce the ions. That's why which solvents will produce the ions? Only polar solvents will produce the ion. That's why ionic compounds are soluble only in the polar solvents. Next point, ionic compounds are the poor conductors of electricity. Why they are poor conductors of electricity? Because in the ionic compounds, the ions, the atoms will be in their fixed position. Their positions are fixed, they do not move. If there is no movement, how electricity will be passed? In the physics we will learn that the movement of free electrons is nothing but passage of current. But here the ions are not moving, they are having fixed position. That's why ionic compounds are poor conductors. Therefore, the ionic compounds are the poor conductors of electrons. But in the molten state means when they will melt. When you heat them, they will melt. So when they melt, what happens? Ions move freely. That's why in the molten state they will conduct electricity. Otherwise, they are poor conductors of electricity. Next point, ionic reactions. Ionic compounds would participate in the ionic reactions. Ionic reaction means so only ions exchange between two different compounds. That is ionic reaction. For example, we will take the two compounds like sodium chloride and silver nitrate. When sodium chloride and silver nitrate react, sodium chloride split into sodium plus Na plus Cl minus. Silver nitrate also split into Ag plus NO3 minus. Now Ag will join with Cl and Na join with NO3, so that you will get silver chloride and sodium nitrate. Since these reactions are very fast, so you can say that ionic compounds would participate. Ionic compounds will participate only in the ionic reactions, which are very fast reactions. Now these are the properties of ionic compounds. Now what are the properties of covalent compounds? Absolutely opposite to this one. So covalent compounds are gases or liquids at the room temperature because of weak covalent bonds. Next, they are having low melting and boiling point comparing to the ionic compounds. And covalent compounds soluble only in the non-polar solvents. And covalent compounds also poor conductors of electricity because they do not produce ions. So movement of particles only, current passage will be there. So there is no ions, there is no pass of current. That's why covalent compounds, since they do not produce any ions, they are poor conductors of electricity. And also covalent compounds participate in molecular reactions because they don't produce the ion. That's why they participate in molecular reactions, and which are slow reactions. So this is the difference between properties of ionic compounds and covalent compounds. So here in the table, if you see that 3 examples has been taken, that is sodium chloride and hydrogen chloride and ethylene. 3 examples has been taken. So here sodium chloride is the ionic compound and ethylene is the covalent compound. In between HCl is there. So if you observe the properties in the table comparison, the properties of HCl are in between of sodium chloride and ethylene. So what is this HCl, how it is different from NaCl and ethylene, and whether we have to call this HCl as ionic compound or covalent compound, we need to discuss that. We will discuss in the next class.